Hello, BookTube. Well, I did indeed get more mail, and since I'm a lonely old shut-in, I thought I'd share it with all of you. Starting with an actual letter, and a pushy one, too. Look at that. Final notice. Okay, so let's find out who's got their knickers in a twist. I'm terrible with check writing and paperwork and stuff like that. So if I stiffed somebody, I assure you, I did not do it intentionally. This is great big final notice. And so who is it who I've stiffed? And how much do they want? The National Audubon Society. Okay, the National Audubon Society. I'm looking through our records. I see you have not heard from you in some time, and your membership has expired. You know? Okay. Right. I've been a National Audubon Society member since I went to school with John James Audubon. I like to think that they could just as easily, when they're looking through the records to see that my membership has expired, look to see how long I've been a member and maybe cut me a little slack. But no. No. Such things don't happen in the 21st century. If I were in charge of the National Audubon Society and I saw that somebody had been a member that long and their membership had lapsed, I would do two things in rapid succession. The first thing I would do would be to Google their name plus the word obituary. If they've died, then they have a good reason that they're not paying their membership dues. And if they're still alive, I would extend their membership first. Then send them a letter and say, I took the liberty of extending your membership. Let me know if that was the wrong decision. But no, it has to be a dunning notice. Final notice. Big red letters. All right, so I'll send them a check. And then the next thing was the TLS, the Times Literary Supplement, which I've mentioned on this channel many times before. I just love it. I love it because it's Steve-style book reviewing. It's Steve books that they review almost from start to finish. They almost don't care at all about nodding to popular culture, which can be maddening, but is also thrilling. Like, for instance, in the last issue of the TLS, they had what was easily the most perceptive and eloquent review of Marvel Studios' Black Panther movie that I've read anywhere. And yet, I mean, the review was brilliant, but it followed the standard TLS failures, including not once mentioning the acting performances, as if you're not even watching actors, or as if acting performances have nothing to do with whether or not a movie is good or bad, which was annoying. But usually it's just scholarly stuff that they do, or highbrow fiction. And I love it. And one of the things I love about it is the letters page. When before you even get to the reviews, you do the letters page. Okay, so like, for instance here, we've got somebody named Gavin Griffiths, who's got a bee in his bonnet about something that came up in an earlier issue about Gore Vidal, of all people. It was a shame that in his sharp appraisal of Mira Breckenridge, Daniel Culpin repeats the rather humdrum view that Gore Vidal was a sparkling essayist, but no more than a good novelist, who failed to reach the bracing heights attained by Bellow, Mailer, and Roth. Arguably, Vidal's achievement has been overshadowed by Breckenridge, which was never more than a sprite, never more than a fling. But arguably, too, in his major fiction, in Julian, Burr, and Lincoln, Vidal reveals himself to be a novelist of the first rank, creating credible historical backgrounds that enable him to skewer both politicians and their motivations with a control of irony that shows a mature and penetrating intelligence. Vidal understands those who wield power and sympathizes with those whose ideals are corrupted. By comparison, Mailer's attempts at historical fiction, think Ancient Evenings, appear clumsy, long-winded, and fatally unconvincing. Okay. Notice all sorts of trickery going on in that letter. There is all sorts of trickery going on in that letter. So there, in fact, is so much rhetorical sleight of hand going on in that short letter that if it didn't say Gavin Griffiths, and if I wasn't sure that the bastard was in his tomb, I would assume that Gore Vidal wrote that letter. Like, for instance, he says, in his major fiction, Julian, Burr, and Lincoln. Notice an omission there. That is very selective cherry picking of, if you were to ask someone who's familiar with Gore Vidal's novels to make a list of 3 titles of his great historical fiction, I'm pretty sure that Julian, Burr, and Lincoln, one of them would be dropped in favor of a book called Creation. And the reason the writer doesn't include it is because it's noticeably weak. It's very powerful. It's very entertaining. But it's noticeably weak as a novel. It is, in fact, what was the phrase? Clumsy, long-winded, and fatally unconvincing. But not only that, that's not the only sleight of hand. Also note that the straw manning here. The original reviewer says that Vidal was not as great a novelist as Bellow, Mailer, and Roth. And look at the person that the letter writer centers on. Not Bellow and not Roth, but Mailer. And when he talks about Mailer, and accuses him of clumsy, long-winded, and fatally unconvincing, what does he center on? Historical fiction. Which was... So he's praising Gore Vidal for his historical fiction and leaving out the weak historical fiction, and damning Norman Mailer for one historical novel, for one historical fiction that was really, really bad. So that, in other words, that's a letter that you can't trust from a Gore Vidal partisan. And then what? Oh, okay, all right, okay. This is the first. Usually the TLS will put front and center in the letters page right here. They will put some controversy, and in the last TLS, a reviewer reviewed a gigantic new history of Hasidism. I actually reviewed it myself. If I remember, I'll leave my review down below. And his review was a hoot. It was a hoot. It was bitter and quippy and very, very good. It'll give you some indication of what kind of review it was that I envied it. I wish I'd written it. And I knew when I read it that it was going to cause all sorts of pious pearl clutching from people writing letters. And here we go. There's two of them here. And so Derek Davis of Chicago writes that Shalom Auslander's review, do we really need yet another smug Richard Dawkins-style paean to the superiority of mainstream enlightened liberal values? Yes, we need as many of them as we can get, especially in the face of something like Hasidism. Ilya Preisel, writes that the review is an affront to the authors of this scholarly work about what is arguably the most successful revivalist movement in the past 300 years of Ashkenazic Judaism, as well as to the readers of the review, who would have been interested in the substance of the book rather than a tirade about crackpots and the reviewer's personal beliefs. Okay, I don't know the reviewer at all, Shalom Auslander, but I'd be willing to bet these letters are pleasing him. Oh, great. And of course, all right. Okay, fantastic. This is the last one. Then we'll go on to we've got a few packages of mail that we can open here before the sun disappears. The sun will be gone for 46 hours. Because it's not going to appear tomorrow. So it's sort of a wintry sunset here. But there's Richard Jenkins was accused in an earlier issue of the TLS of getting his classical geography wrong, his mythogeography wrong, which is the ultimate Oxford Dawn problem that only is taken seriously in the letters page of the TLS. And he writes in, Dear Sir, I have been away, and I've only now seen Colin Leach's letter in which he courteously reproves me for saying that Virgil's Charon ferries Aeneas across the Styx. The river, he says, was Archeron. However, he is mistaken. Virgil could be vague on such matters, but his topography of the underworld waters is clear enough. Archeron flows into Cocytus, Cocytus flows into Styx, and it is Styx across which Charon conveys the hero. Boom. So I will, this one has, I think, it has Frankenstein on the cover, so there'll be a bunch of new Frankenstein books that'll be reviewed. That should be maddening. But anyway, that's the TLS. That's a full meal right there. But now we'll move on. We'll move on to this little mail haul. Okay. All right, good. I asked for this. This is Zachary Mason. This is Metamorphica by the author of The Lost Books of the Odyssey. This is, in case you need it pointed out to you, this is the American cover. In Metamorphica, I'm not doing any favors by letting you stare at this thing. In Metamorphica, Zachary Mason mines Ovid's epic poem, The Metamorphoses, and repurposes its stories as building blocks for a series of gem-like and original new reinventions. Thematically arranged so they flow artfully from one to the next. Ovid did that himself, thanks. Mason gives us surprising and strange new renditions of Echo and Narcissus, Orpheus and Eurydice, and he takes us to the siege of Troy with dreamlike yarns about Paris, Ajax, Helen, and Achilles. He revisits the world of ancient Crete with visions of Theseus, Daedalus, Icarus, and Minos. At times, Mason even turns Ovid, the Roman poet whose abiding work has been the source of material for countless artistic interpretations over the centuries, into a character in this mythic tapestry. And once again, Ovid does that himself. Thank you. I know the publicist means well. Ovid famously says, referring to himself, that the ultimate metamorphosis that his poem will enact and dramatize is his own. That it will make him immortal. That it will change him, metamorphose him from mortal to immortal. And he was right. And Zachary Mason, The Lost Books of the Odyssey was praised everywhere as a debut novel. It has a bit of a history with yours truly, because it wasn't originally praised everywhere. It was praised everywhere once it was picked up and republished. When it was originally published, it was praised not everywhere, but exactly one place by one person, who has since been forgotten in its tale of triumph. Anyway, let's move on. What is our next one here? Oh, great. Okay, this is the finished copy of A.G. Lombardo's Graffiti Palace, which I think is out already. Is it out already? I don't have a pub sheet. I think it's out already. It's a debut novel, and it's a retelling of the Odyssey. So we've got a mythological thing going on here from Frost, Strauss, and Giroux. Okay, so let's try this. It's August 1965, and Los Angeles is scorching. Americo Monk, a street hunting aficionado of graffiti, is frantically trying to return home to the makeshift harbor community assembled from old shipping containers where he lives with his girlfriend Carmen. But this is during the Watts riots, and although his status as a chronicler of all things underground garners him free passage through the territories fiercely controlled by gangs, his trek is nevertheless diverted. Embarking on a thrilling, dangerous, and at times paranormal journey, Monk crosses paths with a dizzying array of representatives from Los Angeles subcultures, including Chinese gangsters, graffiti bombers, witches, and the Nation of Islam leader Elijah Muhammad, among others. Graffiti Palace is a story of a city transmogrified by the uprising of its citizens, and Monk is our tour guide, cataloging and preserving the communities that, surreptitious and unseen, nevertheless formed the backbone of 1960s Los Angeles. Okay, so this reminds me that I haven't reviewed this yet. I read it, and I liked it quite a bit. And pub sheet or no pub sheet, I really need to get to this. Okay, fantastic. All right, Graffiti Palace. So that's two mythological reworkings. No chance the third one will be, but there are a couple still out there that I could get in the mail. Let's see. This is the third and last book of our last pre-storm mail haul. Oh, this is out in early April. When, again, as I mentioned, in early April, a blizzard that shuts down the state of Massachusetts every Wednesday like clockwork is going to be harder to explain. By then, the entire world will have noticed that Boston is getting a whiteout condition blizzard every Wednesday. Not every week on some random day, but every Wednesday. And by then, I mean, clockwork Wednesday state shutting down blizzards shouldn't be happening. So we'll be the talk of the world by then. But in the meantime, this is Maria Fredericks. This is A Death of No Importance. From Minotaur Books. This is a murder mystery. It'll come a little too late for March Mystery Madness. Let's see here. Jane Prescott has perfected the art of serving as a lady's maid in the upper echelons of 1910 New York City society. Invisible until she's needed, Jane has a deft hand and a sharp, observant mind, which means she sees a lot more than the wealthy, glamorous people she serves realize. Jane's thoughtful, clear-eyed, and witty voice leads us into the heart of a gripping, atmospheric murder mystery in a death of no importance. Oh, this is Maria Frederick's debut adult novel. So she's written YA before now. Maria Fredericks was born and raised in New York City, where she still lives with her family. She is the author of several YA novels. A Death of No Importance is her debut adult novel. Oh, isn't that exciting? Huh. Okay. Great. All right. Well, good for her. Okay, so this is Edith Wharton territory. This is 1910 New York. Great. So we have A Death of No Importance. That's rather nice. Death of No Importance. Graffiti Palace, retelling of the Odyssey, set against the backdrop of the Watts riot. That's hilarious right there. And Metamorphosis. Zachary Mason doing the Zachary Mason thing for Ovid this time instead of Homer. So there we go. So plus the TLS and a shrill demand for money. so there you go. That's another mail haul today. I don't think there'll be many more, but I'll be on the alert, and I'll wrap up. I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.